Haefman, Hughesby,
Yes.
Kirsch,
Yes.
Kissinger Wolf,
Yes.
Long,
Here.
Scuball,
Yes.
Swinty,
Here. Yes.
Baloo,
Here.
Zimmerman.
Here.
That's you. Swint.
Okay, we have a quorum. Entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
I so move.
Okay, I have a motion, a second, to adopt the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Wendell, Administrator's Report?
Pass some of these around. I've, pass those down. I think there's plenty there. Couple of things that have been in the news recently, and we'll start with the first one, which is our, we have a budget that's been signed, and we're getting a little more and more information as things unfold here on how that's gonna impact schools across the state, but especially ours. So I tried to put in here just a summary of the highlights of what was in the bill as far as it pertains to schools, and then in the red you'll see is just a little update on how that impacts us directly and what categories mean the most. So the first one is just the revenue limits. Now I'll go through this relatively quickly because you can read it and then ask any questions that you want, but the revenue limits are going to be the most impactful piece of this for us, and they went up from or the low revenue ceiling for us, we were at $10,018.79, I think. And what happened here is they promised $325 increases annually, and after the budget came through, and we'll see if this holds up in court, but for the next 400 and some odd years, right? So, or until, Congress or, our legislature at some point changes that. So, but right now, we know for the foreseeable future, we're gonna see 325. Currently, that does not bring us up to the low revenue limit, so what we'll see is that 325 go on, and then we'll go to the 11,000 for next year, for this fall, when we figure everything out with our revenue limit worksheet, and then the following year, we'll be at 11,325. So we'll start to tack on that low end. So that will, again, I think it's important to note that's not money coming from the state, that the revenue limit is what we have permission to tax our district taxpayers at. So we'll look at all of that and in terms of our referendum and see how that all plays out as we move forward into the fall. And things won't become finalized until October 15th, so we'll have the final numbers then. The next one on there is per pupil aid, and that remains the same. Then the second piece, and this was just in the news recently, which was the general aid or the equalization aid numbers. Now, it looks, we have a huge jump in our equalization aid, over 78% increase from last year, and last year we had a pretty significant increase. The important thing to note is this is not in addition to money that we're allowed to raise. What equalization aid is whatever. When we figure out our revenue limits, and we have 11,000 per kid this year, and we figure all that out with our tax base, and what that number is, just to use last year's number, it came out to somewhere between $13 and $14 million. Then the equalization aid comes back in and gets subtracted from that number, and that's the number that you're allowed to levy for. So it's not additional spendable dollars for us, it really is tax relief, which is a good thing, but we had a pretty significant increase in that, which will help offset some of the tax burden as we figure those numbers out. So right now it sits at 78%. By October 15th, we know we're going to get an increase, but it probably is not going to be that number. So things will, as they finalize and work their way out, we'll see how they change. A couple of reasons that that's gone up the way it was. The general aid calculation and formula is a little more complicated. It works in 3 tiers. So you hear us talk about being negative tertiary sometimes. So the way that works is we qualify in the first 2 categories for certain amounts of money, but then in that 3rd category, the way things work out, it pulls money back in. So the way that things aligned this year for us, because we had an enrollment increase last year, we had property values that were at about 196% of what the state average is. And then we saw with the new regulations and the changes in the formula in the budget, that negative, that secondary category increased by 18%, and then they had a diminishment in that third, that tertiary category where we're negative. So basically, it was, all the stars aligned for us, I guess is the best way, as Sandy and I were talking about, and she reached out to some of the experts to make sure that this was correct. That's the way they presented it to us. So we're gonna see a pretty significant increase in that. We just don't know how much, but that will offset whatever that levy is. So as you move on down the list, you see some of these other ones. They don't impact us as much. But if you look down on number 5, the mental health, school-based services, we see this was always something that was more in a competitive grant category, and we usually did pretty well that way. Where it's gonna benefit us is we may not have as much money coming in annually, but we'll at least have the consistency of knowing how much we're gonna have each year if we wanna make a purchase or enter into an agreement with an organization or something like that. So there will be some benefits there. We don't qualify for sparsity aid. The special education reimbursement will be pretty minimal, but it'll be an increase for us. Number 8 has the high cost transportation aid in that category. We will see some of this. We have no idea what those numbers are gonna be right now, but that's one we'll be keeping an eye on. And then we see some additions in transportation funding, and then we'll see the, our library aid. Common school funds, we saw a pretty significant increase last year, and we'll continue to see that number grow again this year, it looks like. So, all in all, there will be some gains for us, but I'll keep the board updated as the numbers finalize and we know more and see where we stand. The second thing I'd report to the board on tonight, and again, I won't go into depth on this, but this is a bill that we've been following pretty closely. Assembly Bill 321 has passed through both the Assembly and the Senate and is heading to Governor Evers. Now, this is the bill that primarily looks at early literacy, and ultimately, you can read through the bullet points I provided here, but it's heavily based in science of reading strategies and moving away from anything that involves cueing or using context clues to teach reading. So it does this on multiple levels. It creates or opens the door, mandates that there be an Office of Literacy within the Department of Instruction that is not just made up of delegates from the department, but that will have delegates from the Assembly, delegates from the Senate, and delegates from the department. So there will be a number of we'll see how this comes out after the partial vetoes and different things that Governor Evers can do, and we'll keep an eye on it, but ultimately, it is going to, with its passage, change not only our instructional practices, but also the curriculum choices that we have available to us. So I'll keep you updated as we learn more about that one as well. Third thing I just want to talk about briefly, Ron and I were discussing this last week. We'd like to see a little more involvement from staff as far as presenting to the board and opportunities for that to occur. Without, like we just had a conversation about lengthening our meetings, right? So when we have opportunities to do that throughout the year and next month as we sit down and start to plan and map out, the different topics and different things we think would be relevant in departments and grade levels that would present. On those evenings where they present, what we'll do is we'll have the admin team still turn in and submit their written reports, but they'll forego doing an oral report. So we'll provide an opportunity for questions on those evenings, but we'll utilize that time for staff to present. So I just wanted to update you on that as a plan moving forward. And the last thing I have on my list is I just wanted to again recognize, this went out on social media this week, but the efforts of our FCCLA program and our 4 students that were competing at the national level. And again, commend Allison Ewart for her efforts with that group. So we had 4 students who did really well and represented our school very well, and we're very proud of them. So that's all I have on it.
Where was that window again? Where did they go?
Is it Orlando? It's in Florida.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm not sure exactly.
California.
They were in Colorado.
Oh, they're in Colorado.
Yeah.
Colorado, was doing
Somewhere.
Florida. Florida.
Somewhere.
California last year, Colorado.
Yeah,
In Florida,
okay.
Florida.
Okay.
Question, just to think about it, we used to have student council come and report every now and then.
Yep.
And sometimes it's kind of nice to see the kids in here, you don't need them every month, but just that they get exposure to that.
Yeah, we kind of lost that with, I think, with COVID,
Mhm.
we stopped doing that, so that'd be something we bring back too.
Okay, any questions from one? Yes, Wendell said I commented that I would like to hear from different areas of the school district.
Mhm.
You know, we have heard from some, IT, for example, or tech ed, I should say, has reported out, and one or two other ones. I'd like to hear from the other areas. What sort of things are they working on? What are their needs? What can we help them with? That type of conversation, I think would be nice to have. Nothing long or drastic, but just let's, so we're all working together, I guess, is what I'd
So
like
that
to
way
say.
we know that we want to be more aware of what they're doing too.
Right.
We have an interest in them.
Right,
I agree.
okay. All right, any questions for gentlemen? All right, then the next item is the consent agenda item. There's a few. Approve the minutes from the Operations and Finance Committee meeting on June 6th, 2023. Approve the minutes from the summer work session, June 13th, 2023. Approve the minutes from the regular meeting, June 13th, 2023. Approve the minutes from the closed sessions for meetings on June 13th, 14th, 22nd, 2023. Approve the minutes from the special board meeting, June 14th and 22nd, 2023. Approve the invoices from June 10th to July 7th, 2023. And then the employment and contract adjustments that are listed. So I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
I'll second. Swanky?
Okay, I have a motion, a second, to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, one thing that we added or put in this month was just kind of an update on what changes were made with the elementary master's schedule. I think, Guy, you're gonna kind of fill us in on that?
Yeah. The building leadership, a large amount of them decided to come tonight too.
Good.
We worked on this somewhat together. I think I brought forward some of the information. I had gone to a training at my last district with Dr. Michael Reddick. He's known for helping districts with scheduling. We started our meetings by talking a lot about where our priorities are. And Dr. Reddick, and I believe this too, is that you can see what your priorities as a school are by what you don't, or what you put minutes towards. So, you know, when we started to look at our schedule, you know, we also talked about prioritizing our times, but we also talked about how, you know, if we looked at our minutes and we went through our schedule, we looked at our minutes, we really didn't do what a true time study of minutes, but we looked at our minutes and, you know, a lot of what we had in our previous schedule was planning around lunchtime and recess time. And when you look at the number of minutes, it really looks like that's where our priorities were lying. And that's not what I thought we should put our priorities into. You know, we talked about our priorities being ELA and math, the win time that we recently put in, morning meeting time, which is a time that we wanted to give all of our classrooms the opportunity to build a family, build a culture in the classroom. And then we also talked about science and social days. We talked about in some elementary schools, as we looked, and Dr. Reddick has a library of schedules. So we had a chance to look at, or I had a chance to look at a large variety of different schedules. And elementary schools, schedules look very different. In some, you know, when they started to piece together their prep times, there'd be 15 minutes here, 20 minutes here, 30 minutes here. So we talked about one of our priorities probably should be that our collaborative time, that 45-minute section where they go to their specials, we try to keep that intact. We weren't sure if we were going to be able to do that, but we worked on a schedule and we were able to keep that 45-minute intact. So we were able to meet what we thought were our priorities. ELA instruction got 120 minutes in the new schedule. Math instruction got 60 minutes plus iReady Reflex, so maybe it's 60 to 75 minutes. The morning meeting time got 20 minutes, so every classroom has that each morning. The win time got to 45 minutes, so we thought was necessary. And one thing that we looked at was with social studies and science, as we talked in our building leadership team, we found out that some classrooms were only getting 30 minutes of social studies / science time per week. When we look at, if you look at a paper example of our schedule from last year, each classroom has a 30-minute recess time by their lunch, or a little bit close to it. And some grade levels had a 20-minute recess, 15 to 20-minute recess time, a second recess time towards the end of the day. Well, any of you that have had little kids, you know that if you plan on 15 minutes, some of our kids, if we stuck to 15 minutes, they wouldn't even get themselves dressed to get outside. They'd get to the doors and they'd end up turning around and coming back. So when I looked at it, I kind of wanted to get an idea, and I hope I'm not jumping all over.
No.
But when I looked at it, I looked at the cameras to see if we set a 30-minute recess time, what did that really mean? Well, it might mean closer to 30 minutes in 4th and 5th grade because they're able to dress themselves and take care of themselves. They can get outside pretty quick, and when they get in, they can get their stuff off pretty fast. But if you look at 4K, kindergarten, 1st, even 2nd grade, 30-minute recess ends up being maybe, if you're lucky, another 15 minutes onto that. So 30 minutes turns into 45 minutes. If you take a second recess time, you're almost looking at that 15 minutes becoming 30 minutes. So we look at that being a lot of instructional time lost. So, one of the things that we looked at was, like I said, social studies and science, if you're getting 30 minutes and you can't even guarantee that that's happening each day, that that's 30 minutes per week, that's just not what we want to see as far as our priorities. We don't want to see that recess time is more important than science and social studies. That's not what we should be representing as an elementary school. And conservatively, I thought, if you're in, like say 1st grade, if we're saying that they have a 30-minute and a 20-minute, 50-minute total recess time, conservatively, that looks more like probably 8 minutes. So if we can say that we're having that every day, but we can only offer 30 minutes of science and social studies a week, that's just not what we want to represent. The other thing that we looked at, was, in some cases, like I know 1st grade for sure, they had a recess time, or they had lunchtime, and then they came back to the classroom for 30 minutes knowing that their recess time was going to be next. That was not a good use of 30 minutes. 1st grade kids, all they're thinking about is, I got done with lunch and this is what happened at lunch, and now I get to think ahead to recess. That 30 minutes was not a good, useful, productive time. So when we looked at all of that, we really tried to, with this new schedule, we have given 120 minutes to ELA. We have a 45-minute, or 60 to 75 minutes for math. We have 45 minutes for the win time, 20 minutes for morning meeting time, and we guarantee 30 minutes each day for either science or social studies. So we know we're getting that instruction in. And I feel like we have a schedule that we're not letting the recess and lunchtime dictate our schedule. Recess time is important. Kids learn social, they need to get fresh air, but we feel like some of that with being able to guarantee the 45 minutes of our specials and have that collaboration time was important to us. And we talked about having the brain breaks, the activity breaks. Maybe not where you're getting all of your stuff on and going outside, but the teacher can choose the right time within, say, that ELA block, because it can end up being a long block, to fit in a time to go noodle. It's an interactive kind of smart board activity. They can get up, they can take a bathroom break without having to get clothes on and get clothes off and all that time that we feel like we're losing. And I don't know that everybody in the group agrees with me. We had disagreements along the way. People value the recess time. So I wouldn't say that everybody was in complete agreement, but I think they could see that the priorities with this schedule, hopefully they can see it better matches what a priority schedule should look like for an elementary school. So I know I was hopefully not jumping, it seemed like jumping around a lot in my mind, but if you have any questions.
Yeah, I've got one. What are the lunch hours for the different grade levels? Because it's no hidden secret. They're gonna learn more in the morning, they're coming. But that morning's gonna be where they get the biggest, grab the education. And after that, we might tend to lose them because of just their attention span. So when does lunch start for different grade levels? And
I believe our first lunch period is probably, we have a couple classrooms eating in the rooms themselves. 4K is probably first, kindergarten shortly after that, it's probably around 10:35, 10:40.
how do they feel about, I mean, I don't think we can adjust that lunchtime, but how do they feel about a 10:30 lunch? The afternoon class, that's just my concern. I would just see a little kid saying, no offense, I'm spent. When you have that early of a lunch, and I could be wrong. I've been out of education 15 years, so tell me if I'm wrong. But I'm curious about that.
Each grade level started at a different time for lunch though. So
Yeah.
it kind of scattered from there. And we did look at that, like what grade levels could handle more in the morning than the afternoon.
Do you still feel productive with let's say a 10:30 lunchtime?
So, just to speak on behalf of, like, and classroom teachers, Denise is a special area teacher,
Yeah.
so from the classroom teacher, yeah, you did see about 2 o'clock they started to wither. They started to lose focus, like, yes, their morning is their strong time. Lunch, we had, unfortunately, this year, 15 minutes between our lunch and recess, so trying to get any academics in that 15 minutes.
Wait, so it should have gone off.
Yeah, it was not good. So definitely looking forward to the lunch and recess being together.
Good.
But that's a lot of afternoons still, and a lot of academics to push and keep attention. And yeah, you can take brain breaks, but you're still within 4 walls, and that's a lot of time.
That's just my concern. That's one thing I was looking at.
Go ahead.
Right, so what have you built in as far as recess? So what I'm processing is that you've consolidated those into one recess. Is that accurate?
We haven't, the minutes it's a 30-minute recess. It butts up, where they have their lunchtime. So there's, as we look at that schedule, there's a little bit of concern that I have with, if you say that, okay, when you're done with your lunch, you can go up for recess, because I don't want kids hurrying up just to get outside. There's no perfect schedule.
So is that like a
it's a-
45-minute time period, or what time period?
Well, it's still a 30,
are we-
if you look on paper, it's still a 30-minute recess, it's a 30-minute lunch.
So they have, between the two, there's an hour.
Between the two, there's an hour. I have thought back and forth in my head about, okay, so if they get done with lunch, should I say they can just go outside and then that gives them a little bit more recess? But my concern with saying that is, like I said, that I think of myself as that student, I might bypass or I might eat really fast because I'm gonna get outside as much as I can. And I don't want kids not, because it ends up, you give a snack, but it ends up being a long day if your recess, or your lunch is, at 11 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, you got.
Guy, I think there's a comment behind you.
I'm not on their committee, but historically, when we had lunch and recess butted up against each other in kindergarten, it did actually help with behavioral issues in the lunchroom, because they're little, they don't always eat a lot anyway, and those that were historically finished, I think, Ann, you can probably remember this anyway, I mean, we kind of monitored and suggested that some eat more anyway, but those that were done, it was nice that they could just go out.
And I think I'd probably leave that up to the teachers without making or the grade level teams without making a
I think
statement
that's a good
myself.
idea.
So then this would be the elimination of the second recess period. They would have one recess, lunch.
And in
slash
some
recess.
classrooms, I don't, fourth and fifth, and I think it was a split in third grade. Some of those had already eliminated.
So is there concern from any other teachers about that? I mean, has there been feedback about that?
Well, I don't know that the other teachers have expressed any concern about it. We've had those discussions in the leadership team.
Okay.
I mean, there's been some concerns about, you know, the length of day and the amount of, you know, taking away that opportunity to get outside, get some fresh air, get some movement. I mean, we had those discussions within our leadership team.
But then everybody agreed that this would be best.
I don't know that everybody agreed.
Never will.
I think that, as the principal, I said, this is what I feel. I feel that this schedule better meets our priorities. There may be still some disagreement with this group. I didn't ask for 100% consensus.
Would there be an evaluation at some point from them and you sitting down to see how it's working or addressing any issues
I
that come?
think that that's something that as we get into the year, I mean, I think we are always open to those discussions.
Good.
On if we've put this in place, how is it working?
Okay,
So I have a question. Isn't it still like, for the lower grades, less amount, you build to 120 for ELA to fifth grade? Isn't it like for
120.
kindergarten, it's lower amount?
We
Because
went-
their minutes are different from the others for
um,
academics?
I don't know that I went with the, what, you know, Teresa, Angie, and I talked about the minute expectations. They can say anywhere, I mean, when we looked at what was recommended, it was anywhere from 90 to 120. We built in 120 for each grade level. I think we're thinking with the lower elementary, we're looking at with kindergarten and 4K. And 4K didn't go by these minutes. This was kindergarten through fifth grade. We talk about, you know, we've asked for some support from CISA 9 because we recognize that play is important. It's an important part of the day. So some of those minutes, we're going to be looking at some of that play-based learning.
And I guess that's where what I remember is that each grade level kind of built up to 120. So kindergarten might have been 45, and then first grade on hour 60, something like that. Is that still the case?
We looked at the recommendation, and the recommendation was anywhere from 90 to 120.
They're not defining.
No, we didn't look at, it wasn't shown to us as far as grade level expectations. You know, like I said, we assumed that some of the minutes in the kindergarten, not so much, or 4K will be part of that, was looking at how the play-based will play into those minutes.
So I know when one concern I know Bob had with other situations is that second recess kind of gave the staff some more prep time. So right now they have 40 minutes of prep time a day. Well, about 40, a little less probably by the time they walk their kids back and forth.
Yeah, it's
So
about,
that's
yeah.
their prep time for a day. So that second recess gave them more prep time. And you're extending the day, so
Yeah, we extended, I mean, contractually, we were within the contract times, but we did extend the teaching day to 3:15 is when they'll take their kids out. And we wanted to make sure that we had the time so that they were getting back from breakfast in time to give us the 20 minutes morning meeting, so there's 5 additional minutes in the morning.
what is your expectation now for the time for them to be at school then? The teachers?
The contractual time hasn't changed. It's 7:45 to 3:45.
So they're gonna get their 5 minutes before the kids are in their classrooms.
Yeah,
And then at the end of the day, everybody, K-12, are all going out at the same time.
right.
That is a concern of mine. because we already have a
Well,
cluster, but
We'll see how it goes.
Well, that's the thing that we're gonna look at release time, because that is
Yeah.
something that we're aware of, that they're all getting on at the same time, but I feel like, you know, if we're sticking to the 3:15, and as fast, I mean, it's not necessarily a high school issue where I see that number of high school kids on the bus. I walk a bus, for this last couple of years, I walked a late bus down, and, I'm usually wanting to get the kids down before the middle school gets released, but I think as fast as they release, if we stick with the 3:15, though, our kids will be getting on the bus. What was happening, you know, after the middle school, what was happening was that we were putting little kids on that bus at, say, 3:05, and waiting for the older kids to release. And some of those little kids have such a long bus ride that we were having behaviors on those buses before they even pulled out. Because that's adding an additional 10, maybe 15 minutes to the little kids being on the bus, before they even pull out sometimes.
Yeah, I think, I'm glad to hear that the focus is on the education side of stuff, that you want to get the math, the science, all the stuff
Well, that was a
as much as
concern.
can.
I mean, like I said, if we looked at it and, you know, I looked at some of the early, when I did the minute calculations. If I think of, say, first grade or kindergarten being where it's conservatively 80 minutes of recess a day, and then we're only offering 30 minutes of science social studies a week, that
Yeah.
doesn't look right to me.
Well, I think, you know, if, as you get into it, and you see how it's going, in, you know, a couple months into the year, 2-3 months into the year, just, you know, just give us a heads up, how's it going? Have you had to make any changes? If
Well,
not, what else?
You know, we definitely will be looking at that release time at the end of the day. That is
Okay.
something that we, you know, it all sounds good when you're talking, but until you actually see how it works, we'll have
Right.
to see how it works. And
Sure.
if there's a issue, if there's a problem, then, you know, we'll have to make an adjustment then.
Okay.
I
I
also,
want to,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, I want to take a minute just to say, you know, I don't have the expertise to speak operationally about whether it's 120 minutes or 60 or 15 or 45, but I want to echo Zim's comments. This district, every year, from the outside sources, are measured on math and reading. And we know in life, math and reading are absolutely critical for us to be successful, regardless of workplace or college or wherever we're off to. So I just want to echo those comments, that I'm so pleased to hear that the schedule has been arranged around academics, and particularly math and English, because we know when they're seniors in high school, we look at their test scores, and we've looked at them for 11 years before that. Math and English, you know, are where the emphasis is, and in the elementary school, we know that's where that great that great start has to be and begin. So I applaud your emphasis on academics, and particularly on math and reading.
Well, and I want to thank the group for coming, and I don't think any of them are gonna, if there's something that they see that isn't working with this schedule, I think I don't know that anybody is unwilling to come in and tell me, hey, this isn't working, we need to take a look at this again. So it's something that we're constantly going to be checking on, especially with it being new.
Well, I
Okay.
have one more question. Will be at the younger levels recognizing the need for social outlet, okay, for energy outlet, especially at the younger age, because they haven't yet developmentally gotten to the point where they can sit 4 hours at a time and focus on something without an outlet. Will those grade levels teachers, so I'm not saying necessarily a planned recess time, that's not what I'm saying. Will those teachers be given the flexibility to incorporate outdoor activities into either WIN or social study teaching, science teaching, things along those lines? to enable, will that flexibility be allowed with those grade levels?
The flexibility is always kind of been there. There's certain classes that will, you know, they may not have that second recess time, but they, you know, as the weather gets nicer, they recognize that they
So they can
can do
use their,
something outside, they can take advantage of it, something with science or social studies with the,
I just wanna make sure that it's, I mean, knowing what, you know, just personally living that life for many years, I do know how long it is of a day for little ones. And I do know that they need to get out and run and move, and they cannot sit.
Well,
So I
yeah.
understand that outlet, but I also appreciate, in fact, we were talking earlier about the, you know, the need to focus on math and science, and I mirror your comments, because I do think that has to be our priorities. I just think that we need to make sure that we're giving our staff the flexibility within their day to meet the needs of their children while incorporating that educational opportunity.
Yeah, and they're gonna continue to have that, and, you know, when I designed I had a schedule before. There was a small group that sat down and really came up with this schedule, and then we shared it back to the building leadership. The original schedule that I came up with, I was trying to put in these breaks, and then I thought, I can't determine when would be a good time for that break. It'll be up to the classroom teacher will be able to gauge with this, the lesson that they're teaching, is this a good time for a break, or should I try to get through this and then take a little break here? So the classroom teachers still have that, just being able to take those breaks when it makes sense for them. I just don't want it to necessarily be a planned recess break, because I worry about the instructional time that's lost.
I agree. I mean, I see both sides of it, so.
Okay,
I would agree with Shar. Quality teaching is better than quantity. And just because you have to put more time in a day doesn't always mean you're gonna get more quality out of your students. I mean, you can't pour more into a glass when it's completely full.
Yeah, I
And
understand.
I worry about that. I worry about the length of these times on young children. So,
Well, we'll continue to take a look at it as we get a chance to get, acclimated to this new schedule.
okay. Well, thanks, Guy. Appreciate it. Thank you
Thank you.
for your contributions and coming in. Appreciate it. Okay, next item is approve the annual declaration and parent notice of district student academic standards that will be in effect for 23-24 school year. Any comments on that?
It's just an annual declaration that the board's required to do to adopt our standards. We traditionally use the Wisconsin DPI standards, and the recommendation is to continue to do so.
Okay, so I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the annual declaration of parent notice.
Long second.
Okay, a motion a second to approve the annual declaration and parent notice. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, designate the following depositories: Crossbridge Community Bank and Local Government Investment Pool. Anything we need to,
No, just another required.
yep. Okay, so I'd entertain a motion to approve those two.
I so move.
Second?
Kirsch, second.
Okay, a motion is second to approve the depositories listed. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And designate the following school district attorneys as listed, and I think we've added one.
We've added one, yeah. So Weld Riley is our go-to. We use Dean Dietrich primarily. We have Corals and Brady there, Davis and Kelthau, and then Boardman Clark was the addition. And that was one that I've utilized a couple of times this year, just because they are so active in presenting to our various professional organizations, whether it's ASA or whether it's WASDA, or they come to our PAC meeting every other month and provide a legal brief that at times, if it's a question that fits into one of the categories that they have already addressed, I know it's going to be a pretty efficient process if I reach out to them to provide the details and let them work through it, rather than having to research the entire thing. So Adding them, I think, will save us some efficiency in certain, just having the option to use them. So I added them this year.
Okay. So to entertain a motion to approve the school district attorneys.
I so move, Baloo.
Second, Swente.
Okay, motion a second to approve the school district attorneys as listed. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Public comment. Any public comment this evening?
Chickens.
Anyone?
Chickens, you want him to stand up on? He would like
But
somebody.
they're all sitting there so prim and prime.
I'm gonna just make one, I know at the last board meeting, I watched the, YouTube that Stacy Boulder acknowledged the middle school for making the donations to the Tomahawk Dream Park, and as treasurer of Tomahawk Dream Park, thank you, from the two
Excellent.
different groups.
Oh, thank you.
We don't have the federal funds yet, but it's looking good.
Good.
The project's gonna be going.
Good. Any other public comment? Board referrals? Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm Lori Schmidt, I think that's great that you are going to have staff come in and present to you about their needs and whatever you said. That was wonderful.
Good.
Good that you're wanting to hear from staff and wanting to know what's going on.
We do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We lost that element when we lost the curriculum committee. We had that a lot.
Okay, board referrals? Any board referrals? No? Okay, entertain a motion then to go into closed session.
So moved, Kirsch.
Second.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to go into closed session. Any discussion? Roll call, please, Colleen.
Kirsch,
Yes.
Kissinger Wolf,
Yes.
Long,
Yes.
Screwball,
Yes.
Swente,
Yes.
Baloo,
Yes.
Zim,
Yes.
Hughesby.
Yes.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna, you guys wanna come get me when you go back in?
Yeah.